So thank you everybody so much for joining the What's the Buzz session for today. My name is Elizabeth Gordon-Hammersley, and I am the customer evangelist here at IntroHive. The What's the Buzz series is really intended to highlight and really kind of share our customers' incredible stories around digital transformation and how IntroHive really played a role or is playing a role in that success story. And so today, I am joined by Rosa Colón. She is the Senior Manager for Marketing Technology at Lowenstein Sandler. Lowenstein Sandler is a national law firm with over 350 lawyers across the country. They have 5 offices in New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Utah, and Palo Alto. They cover a variety of sectors. But really in particular, they focus, and where their strengths are, I should say, is in technology, life sciences, and investment funds. But today, Rosa is going to capture and talk about all the great innovative ways that her and her team are using customer intelligence to be competitive in the market and solve some of the business challenges that they have. But before we jump right in, if anyone has any questions during the session, please feel free to plop them right in the Q&A section. We will get to those at the end, but I also wanted to thank those that signed up and registered and provided questions that we could share at the end of the session as well. So we will get to those. But to jump right in, Rosa, welcome. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to kind of walk through the Lowenstein journey. And so let's kick off with where everything started back in 2018, 2019, in terms of what was that trigger point or that challenge that Lowenstein Sandler was looking to solve back in the day? And how did IntroHive kind of come on your radar, and how was it seen that IntroHive could solve some of those challenges?
Sure. Yeah. So, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's I too appreciate all the thoughtful questions that were people put into the forum before we started the session today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Yeah, so for us at Lowenstein around 2018, 2019, we had a CRM. We also had an ERM at the time that we were working. That particular ERM, which no longer exists today, was being sunset by the organization. And so just to give the audience some background, our firm still to today, we have used the same CRM for over a decade. It's nearly 15 years now that we've been using our CRM system. And through that time period, unfortunately, adoption and sharing of contacts from our attorneys was not well received. And many of the attorneys just decided to opt out. So having an ERM, having the ability to understand who our attorneys were already communicating with, was something that we needed to do differently than most firms. Most firms that were relying on the ability to sync contacts and keeping contact lists up to date via their outlooks was just not something that we could rely on. So when we found that out, we went to market to see what was the best-in-class solutions out there. And there were a lot of things about IntroHive that really appealed to us. At the time, I think IntroHive was newer to the space when we were evaluating it. But you guys had a lot of really great sells, the user interface, the ability and ease of the user interface, the ability for our BD team to have access to that user interface. And you guys provided training for us. Additionally, the enrichment of contact data was incredibly appealing to us. And I think what really sold us in the end too was the integrations that you guys were working on. And so for us, the ability to have just something native to the system that was already integrating with the CRM that we were using at that point and we still use today was a really big selling point. So in 2019, we signed a contract with you, and looking back, and I've said this on other presentations I've been on, I think the timing was fortunate for us with what happened in 2020, because by the time the pandemic hit in March of 2020, we were in a position where we had all of our rainmakers, all of our attorneys that we were interested in understanding who their relationships were, and who they were communicating. We had already ingested them into the Hive, and we were in a position come March 2020 where we could do a lot of really great things, because we had done that planning on the onset. So unfortunately, with what happened with COVID and the pandemic, that of course we never would have wanted that to happen, but because we had done the planning on the onset, we were just in a really better position than I think a lot of firms were when it did hit, and we had to scramble to send out communications and things like that.
That's a really good point, because I think many people who had Intro Hive installed would say the same thing. I think it's kind of that passive data capture that you're looking to do. And especially when you're not in an office, you're not passing people in the hallways, you're not syncing as much as you would, obviously working remotely or working from home. I would say it was pretty great timing of Intro Hive installed. So that's fantastic, and nice to know that you had that in place for when kind of everything happened in 2020. So that's fantastic. Another note that I kind of pick up on in terms of adoption, I think that there are many people probably on this call who can relate to adoption challenges with a CRM. And so I think that is one of the great benefits of Intro Hive and the platform, is helping kind of with adoption, but also helping with that passive kind of, picking up that passive data in a manner that doesn't ask much of your team. So I was just curious, like, what kind of use cases are you looking to use kind of relationship intelligence to solve any challenges that you have, or to inform any decisions that you're making?
Yeah, so at a very base level, right, when it came to implementing Intro Hive and actually using it, really we were solving for who our attorney is speaking to. What ended up happening in 2020, and even still to this day, the attorneys kind of just assume we know who their contacts are, who their clients are, who their prospects are. They really lean on us to have that information ready to go. So at a very base level, having the ability to have and be able to create client and distribution lists is something that was huge for us. And that's really just because of the environment and the culture here, where we couldn't really rely on our syncing attorneys, although we do have some. For a great majority of our attorneys, being able to not even ask them like, oh, who do you want to include in this mailing, whether if it's an event or a client alert or an announcement. So it's nice to be able, because of the platform we have created and it includes Intro Hive. And again, just to give you a little bit of background about how we do things here on the team, our marketing and business development team are 20 individuals. About half of those are our business development team members. The other half is our marketing team, and that consists of our branding, our communications, and our technology. But specifically, our technology team are two people. It's myself and my colleague, who's who's joined in today. Her name is Melanie Canto. She's fantastic. So we're a really lean and mean team that's really on a daily basis. We're asked to provide who knows who reports, build out distribution lists, and often with very quick turnaround times. And the amount of content, news and insights content that our firm distributes on a day-to-day basis is above average, I think, for a firm of our size. And I think it's really contributed to the success of the firm. Just this year, for instance, Lowenstein made the AM Law 100. We cracked that ceiling. Yeah, so I really do think it's because of the processes we have built in place where we have been able to be more efficient with our time. And a lot of that is with the help of our platform. So we have IntroHive as our ERM. We have our CRM. We integrate our CRM with our time and billing system. So we have an outlook of who our clients are. And we're also actually in the process of building out an integration with an alumni database tool. So we're working on making that process more efficient as well. So when we are providing, spreadsheets to our colleagues and the attorneys for them to review for distribution purposes, we are able not only to provide information about who knows who, but is this individual a client? Are they alumni? Who do they know at the firm today? Who did they know at the firm previously? As well as, have they attended a recent event? Have they opened a recent communication? Because we also have an integration with our email marketing platform. So that ecosystem that we've built and started to build out even more really works as a cohesive system to provide all of these insights to our business development team. And they use it for beyond distributions and events. They use it for pitch materials, for RFP, for cross-practice opportunities and developing those opportunities. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it absolutely answers the question and actually gives me even more questions. But the thing that I think I've taken from your answer there is that there's some really interesting, you're using MarTech in a way that is really intentional. It sounds like everything has a role and a way to feed in to just make those insights greater and bigger and more useful. And so it's just interesting to hear you say kind of where IntroHive plays that role, but where the other pieces kind of play a role as well. And that really it's the ecosystem and not necessarily just one, which is important, I think, for everybody on this call. And I'm sure people can relate. One really interesting thing that you mentioned was alumni tracking, or just kind of understanding where alumni are going. That's something that I've actually heard quite frequently recently amongst law firms, but also accounting firms and just professional services in general. I think that's kind of a hot topic these days in terms of tracking your alumni, because it's a network of people that are really important to stay in contact with. And they obviously were advocates at one point with your firm. Next up, I was just curious, what kind of benefits, I mean, you just talked about plenty of benefits and all the different ways that IntroHive has benefited, but in terms of measuring any kind of success, can you share with us kind of how you do so in measuring the success of customer intelligence?
Yeah, I have to be honest, that's something that we're still working on to this day. The idea of measuring the return on investment or the return on objective is something that I think for B2B firms is kind of can feel overwhelming, right? Because there are so many data points that we can work on. In terms of initial benefits for us, it was just about efficiencies. How can we make sure that we can create our distribution list in a way that's most efficient and also comprehensive, because we were missing such a big pool of data, because we were relying really on the attorneys. So going back to something you said initially, Elizabeth, the ability to passively collect that data was huge, and also the ability to enrich that data and all the ways that InterHive enriches the data was really important for us and beneficial for us early on. As we've continued our relationship with InterHive, we have gained more and more benefits. And I think it's because you guys, my lights went out. And I think it's because you guys have also been a great partner in really listening to our needs and what we need more from you, right? And not to get ahead of myself, but just being able to, for instance, the API data extracts over the past year, and since we had implemented the system, we were struggling with the ability to export the contact data. We were relying on just the out-of-the-box data exports that the InterHive system provides. But we knew that you had so much data that was there, and we worked really closely with our account managers at the time, Colin and Haiti, and they were wonderful in kind of providing us those data reports as we needed. We would often email them and say, hey, we have this big pitch, or we're trying to do some competitive intelligence on these particular companies. Can you do a data pull for us? Because the way that we were doing the data pulls within the InterHive database was extremely time consuming, but we needed to return something really quickly. So the account managers were great, but what we found is that you guys were listening to our issues with doing that, and you then provided an additional resource for us with the data extract reports, where through an API call, we could start pulling that data on our own. So we didn't have to rely on our account managers. And so we implemented that over the past year. There's been some kinks along the way, but you again have helped us with those. You've worked with us in creating formulas within Excel and really teaching us how to manipulate the data so that we can get the kind of insights that we needed in the most efficient way possible. So we continue to see benefits today. And I won't talk about like the thing I'm looking forward to the most, because I know that's something we're going to talk about next.
I know all of this is just like making me excited to chat about kind of what's to come.
Right.
But I was just curious, in terms of all the great work and all the great data that you're getting, are there any anecdotes or kind of stories that you could share in terms of successes that you've seen because the insights have led you to X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. So I actually reached out to my team because, and this is something that I put on my to-do list for the future, because it's funny, we are working so diligently every day to provide these Who Knows Who reports and all these different types of reports that we provide to our business development team and even our management team. I failed to mention that one of the things, the reports that we get from our account team are user metrics, and I report to our management team on that about, I used to do it quarterly, but now it's 2 times a year that I report to our management team in terms of all of our user metrics. How many contacts are we seeing in the Hive? How many users are actually utilizing the system? Things like that. But I realized when I sent out that email to my colleagues about sharing any anecdotes that they wanted to share on this call today, that we need to do a better job. Melanie and myself need to do a better job about, after we send out Who Knows Who report back. Was it helpful for the event? Was there information that would have been more beneficial or seen differently maybe within the Excel spreadsheet, so that we can learn for the next time. And we do that, in passing, but I think having a formal way of kind of reporting on that information is something that we plan to include as part of our processes for when we provide reports from InterHive and our CRM. But in terms of anecdotes, I talked about our distribution list. That is huge. That is gold. You know, our attorneys are generating so much news and insights and thought leadership content that being able to get that content to our clients and our prospects and our contacts and our alumni and our, you know, the press, the media, all of that is critical to our day-to-day business initiatives and marketing initiatives, but also, you know, just the ability to provide competitive intelligence and industry-specific competitive intelligence when our colleagues are doing practice research or cross-practice research, especially when it comes to pitches and RFPs. And that's something that they're doing all the time as new deals emerge and we start working with new clients or trying to expand our business with existing clients, and also business planning. So we've become much more methodical in the way that our team is doing in business planning. And again, having, you know, at the end of the day, when it comes to B2B, it's all about your network and the people that you're working with. So having the ability to have a starting point of your contacts and then enriching that data with our data that we have from social media, from website traffic, organizational website traffic, our e-marketing system, our experience management database, our time and billing system. All of that has really been really helpful in creating a business plan that's actionable and also measurable. So that's something that's really exciting that the team has been doing and working on that wouldn't be possible without the data that we have from IntroHive as well as our other systems. Reporting on sponsorship requests. We get so many invites, conferences, and different types of sponsorships that the firm does, and being able to kind of identify any new contacts that have emerged from that is something that we're also working towards and using the database for. Of course, I think I mentioned previously, but our events, being able to measure the return on objective for each of our events, whether they're sponsorships or, you know, even just like a cocktail party for contacts and clients and prospects. That is something that the team is using the data with. Yeah, and I think I spoke a lot about our who knows who and already and the way that we're using our API data extracts to make that easier to manage. But those are the ways that we're seeing success day to day, and it's really exciting to see.
Nice. That's fantastic. And it's really, what I'm hearing too, is that it's about the quality of data that you're getting out and using that data to be really smart about different intentional, I guess, is something also I'm hearing kind of in the theme of how you strategize and look at business and who you're going to interact with rather than throw a wide net. It's kind of like, let's be intentional. Let's be smart about this. So you're talking about API extracts, you know, who knows who, but I would love to dig into kind of what you're excited about next, and that next level of kind of your journey with IntroHive and all the data that it can provide. Can you expand upon that?
Yeah, so when we got data extracts, part of the package that when we implemented data extracts that we were really excited about was the idea of Power BI reports. And your team is fantastic. They have a series of templates that they had created to coincide with the API data extracts report that would allow us to visualize the data that we see within the spreadsheets. You know, Melanie and myself, we live in the spreadsheets, we see the data. Sometimes it's really easy for us to kind of pinpoint some of the things that would be helpful for our BD team. But for the BD team and for our management team and just for the team in general, being able to visualize that data and being able to manipulate the data in a really easy way is something that we know is the next piece and critical to take the infrastructure that we've built and this ecosystem that we've built to the next level. And we know that there are firms out there that have data warehouses and data marts. And that is something that would be fantastic to have with an unlimited budget, but just to be realistic, being able to do those kinds of strategic planning using the data that we have, we've kind of had to find our own ways of going about it, and through the years we've created PowerPoints, we've created some really advanced and Excel spreadsheets that we have provided to our management team. But it's not sustainable, right? We could do that for one practice area, or we can do it for a marketing campaign. But with just Melanie and myself, and our team of 20 people, it's not a sustainable model, right? So really being, again, efficiency is something that's really important for our team and for our firm. And so having those data extracts, we were like, great, we have these Power BI reports, we're going to get them up and running. We're going to be able to share this with our team. Right away, we kind of ran into some issues internally. And that's just because, for us and for our IT team, the concept of the Power BI reports and inputting all the data that we had was newer to them. So it's been taking a lot longer than we initially anticipated in implementing those Power BI reports. But again, I think you guys are really doing a really good job of listening to our needs and the struggles and the challenges that we're faced with. Because most recently you guys announced the integrated data dashboards. And right away I saw it and I was like, all right, our director has to come into this meeting. Our CMO has to come into this meeting. This is exactly, the kinds of reports and dashboards that you guys have been wanting. And I like the way you guys have broken it down on the user interface, where it's about finding opportunities, winning new business, retaining clients, but being able to visualize again the trends in engagement with particular contacts, with groups of contacts, either if it's based on the companies or organizations that they're working with, or based on title, being able to identify if any of those contacts, if engagement has decreased, if it's increased, has it increased within a particular practice area that we weren't aware of, being able to do some of that white space reporting. It was available to us through the data extracts, but because we ran into issues with implementing our Power BI reports, the fact that you guys have created an out of the box, for all intents and purposes, those reports within the platform itself is huge for us. It's huge for our team of 2 individuals. We work closely with you guys on providing training for our business development team. So that's what we're working towards next, getting our business development team access to the dashboards so that they can see what we've been seeing in terms of all the activity that I was talking about, lonely accounts. There's a whole dashboard that's dedicated to future meetings. So that's something that I've heard my business development colleagues talk about a lot. Sometimes they struggle. Our attorneys are so busy working on the matters and the clients that they're working on that they don't always think about letting the business development colleagues know, that they have an important upcoming meeting coming up, whether it's with a top client, a key client, a client or a prospect that they're trying to gain more work from. The ability to kind of know that information without having to rely on them to tell us makes it much easier for our business development team to do their job. Right. And that's, again, something else that's within the dashboards. Succession planning. I could go on and on. I'm going to take a pause because I could see you have a question, I think.
No, it's all good. This is fantastic. And that's what I'm really excited for. If it wasn't clear, Lowenstein is signing up for a 30-day trial with integrated dashboards. And to Rosa's point, there is incredible amount of data in there that really is just at your fingertips. You touched on a couple points where, depending on how big your team is, depending on the resources you have, depending on if you have CRM or not, these dashboards are just able to serve up right to your fingertips. And one thing that you touched on earlier, Rosa, is kind of that filtering option. So not only can you go in these dashboards and kind of see all the insights, you can go in and play with it and really see and really pick out exactly what you're looking to find an answer to. So that's really exciting. I can't wait personally to see kind of like how you and your team and your BD team find the dashboards. I can only imagine that they'll be really beneficial to the team, especially considering the ecosystem of your MarTech and kind of how you're using data internally to solve challenges and really be innovative. So I do know that we are up on time. For those of you who have stayed, I really appreciate it. We are going to continue and just answer a couple questions. If you want to stay with us, please feel free to do so. If you have to hop, I completely understand. If you have to hop, we will have another session of What's the Buzz later this summer / early fall. So keep an eye out for that if you do have to hop. But I do want to jump into some of these extra questions that people sent in just ahead of the webinar. So let's see. I think some of them we've actually covered. Rosa, you've covered a swath of great information. You have talked about how useful the tool is for your BD and marketing teams. How the insights that have been gained. You've talked about the benefits. One other question we have here was, what source systems did you use to gain the customer intelligence you needed? I think you did touch on this in terms of your ecosystem of MarTech that you do have, whether it's like time and billing or whether it's your CRM. We did kind of touch on those systems. So let me just jump down to see, did you experience any resistance to adopting IntroHive by your sales team? If so, can you explain what they resisted or where you struggled to get adoption? What did you do to overcome it?
Not by our business development team. No, I think we're all, whenever we make decisions about new technologies, we really work hand in hand with our marketing and business development team. We are one team. What benefits me benefits them. And so we try to stay in constant communication about that. But yes, I will say, I think that just generally attorneys, and maybe it's just not attorneys, but I think people in general are uncomfortable with sharing contact information, especially when we're talking about the revenue that they're bringing in, right? They can be secretive about it. So I think that there was some hesitancy. I was actually just having a very similar conversation with another vendor yesterday, and talking about like AI and ChatGPT and all of that. And it's funny because I think that it's just a matter of time, right? At one point, and I've been with this firm since 2016, the idea of ingesting passively the contacts and the meeting information of our attorneys and their contacts is something that would have made everyone very uncomfortable. But it's just, it helps them. They've seen that it helps. They've seen that it makes it more efficient just across the board. So yes, there definitely was some hesitancy. What did we do to overcome it? We just did it. We knew that it was the right decision to make at the time, and thank goodness we did. Because again, we wouldn't have been in the position that we are in today through the pandemic if we hadn't put those pieces in place. So yeah, I think it was just at a management level, they decided that this is what needed to be done, and they did it.
Yeah, And yeah, kudos to you and your team for jumping in and making that decision for the team. And then of course, seeing the benefit and the payoff from having this information now. We have heard from accounting and legal and professional services, there's definitely, I think that to your point, it's human nature to be like, oh, suspicious or skeptical of what exactly are you reading. I heard one customer actually mention, they were like, you know what, it's like an envelope, it's like a piece of mail. Like you're getting all the information on the outside of the envelope, but you're not getting the actual piece of mail and kind of like the nitty gritty of it all, right? Um, so it's really, it's more approachable and understandable. I think once people just kind of understand exactly the key information that we're pulling to gain those insights. And we're not looking at your personal emails or anything like that. But it's totally human nature, I think, for people to be a little bit like skeptical at the beginning, but I think to your point, Rosa, like people see the benefit and it far outweighs kind of any skepticism and quickly kind of ignites, I think, the skepticism. Let's see here. We have a question in the chat, I believe. Oh, we did. It's answered. Fantastic. By one of our lovely colleagues. Let's see here. So there was one other question that said, what specific feature of IntroHive's platform do customers find most helpful in streamlining their CRM processes and improving their overall business performance? I know you kind of touched on this in terms of API extracts and who knows who reporting and things like that, but any other insight there you'd like to share?
I think the only thing I would add is that, it's funny, when we first implemented IntroHive, we actually thought that the digest reports that you guys provide, they're really so useful. I personally use them from time to time because it's especially when I have meetings with attorneys or particular people externally. It's nice to know, it's nice to be informed, right? Those were not as picked up as we imagined by the attorneys. And I think it's because they just get so much email, right? That it was just a little bit too much. But I really think an unsung hero is the filtering. The filtering abilities that you guys have within the company and the people section, especially the people section, the filtering for industries, the filtering for companies, titles, location, that has been really key for our business development team. Again, because we provide them with training, they don't have to rely necessarily on us to kind of get the kinds of reports that they need. And so that really has been huge. And it seems so simple, right? But we didn't have that with our past ERM. And we also haven't seen it to the capacity that it's available in IntroHive and other systems. So that's been really useful for us.
That's great. That's fantastic. One last question. I know we are like well over time here, so I really appreciate the people who have stayed with us. But one last question was, does Lowenstein use their our data cleanse tool? Or do they use any third-party data enrichment tool?
No, we're definitely considering IntroHive's data cleanse tool. We're not currently. Part of that is because completely unrelated to IntroHive, we're upgrading so many systems internally. We just don't feel like we're prepared for it. But that is something that we're looking at. And we don't formally use any third-party enrichment tools, but we are currently in the process of integrating a solution that will integrate alumni data. And we have thoroughly vetted it and feel very comfortable with the data that's in there. So that is a third-party tool that will enrich our data and our really important key critical data with alumni. So that's something that we're currently in the process of doing today.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, Rosa, thank you again so much for joining us today and for sharing your Lowenstein story. It's really impressive, honestly, what you and your small team are accomplishing. I know you have a lot on your plate, a lot of great projects. So thank you everyone so much for joining us again today. We will be sending out the recording. So if, for those of you who are no longer here and had to drop early, you'll be able to get the full recording. And as mentioned, we do have another What's the Buzz coming up late summer, early fall. So please keep an eye out for that. And if there are any questions that have popped up during this session that maybe you didn't have a chance to ask, please ensure that you're following up with your account executive. We're always here to answer any questions. But Rosa, thank you again. Really, really appreciate your time and spending it with us.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. And for anybody who's on the call or watching the recording, I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about IntraHive, I'm happy to answer or connect you with Melanie Canto, who also is wonderful and can answer questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Rosa. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Everybody take care and have a lovely day.
You too. Take care.
You.